Hi, I'm David White. I'm one of the pre-sales specialists here at the Access Group, and I'm here today to talk to you about what kind of return on investments are you expecting when you buy a new system. So as we travel through the sales process, we often engage people that like to understand a little bit more about the terminology that we use. We talk about return on investment and reduction in data churn. We talk about controlling your savings and making sure you've got cost management in place, potentially even looking at inventory and stock evaluation, and then looking at theoretical profitability rather than budgeted or actual. So where do we find these elusive savings, and where are the areas that we should be focusing on to ensure that we get the savings that will justify the cost for your new system? We'll be looking for some real-time accuracy and reporting. Decrease those laborious tasks in the background, whilst increasing your credit capture. Ensuring that you've got rationalisations and gatekeepers on your product list. Increase your visibility on your wastage, increase your gross profit margins, and improve your management and stock holding. These are the main areas that we focus on within Access Procure Wizard. You can see one of the feedback points. The time factor alone had saved numerous staffing hours and enabled us to focus resource on less mundane tasks that impact the business positively. So through the operation, we tend to reach out to the industry to find some information back on what areas are getting focused on at the moment. We looked at the industry and says, how many of you actually have the processes in place to capture your data to ensure that you're maximising all your savings? With more than 75% of operations still using antiquated systems, spreadsheet and paper processes, it's easy to see how the process becomes laborious and inaccurate, typically resulting in reactive measures rather than a proactive response. So what should your system provide you? You'll be looking for a system that's going to give you an analytic dashboard, a high level of how the business is performing to date in real-time information. You want that information to be able to be broken down, say such as revenue, spend, even drill into a category. You want to go further into that category spend and you want to look at particular products and areas. You'll have the ability to then drill into that one product and look at its history over the generation of time, as well as what's actually active on the system at the moment. Having the ability to then drill back into the purchase order if requested or required, you'll have the information at hand at any given time. So what happens if we decide to continue with our manual processes and do nothing instead of putting a system in play or switching out a system that isn't adequate for your business needs? Well, you're still going to have those errors, you're still going to have the poor visibility, the human error in the system with lack of control, incorrect data and increased costs. And you're going to have a reactive process rather than a proactive management in the business. Whereas if you had that data at hand and it was automated, you'd be looking for 100% inaccuracy. You would want defined control measures with increased profit margins. You would want a proactive approach to the business like we spoke about, and most importantly, you want to control those labour costs within the business. So what if the system was capable of automating the approval process, capturing each cost centre at the point of the purchase order creation and fully automating that directly through into the payment schedule? What happens if you could then match and complete the invoice and cross from the purchase order to the delivery sequence and then capture the credit required when something goes wrong? What happens if you want the full automation from approval to payment with a seamless process in the middle, and most importantly collate all the accruals at one click of a button? Do this properly and you should have a business that becomes 100% paperless. You can see another customer said that they've saved 5,000 working hours, they've had 625 days in labour costs reduced, and they've 125 weeks by automating their invoice process. So what is a purchase to pay process? We spoke about approval through payment. We think about, we raise the purchase order on a system, we see the visibility through email or by logging in. We then approve adequately based on the information that's on that purchase order. Delivery comes in, we want to match that delivery sequence from what the supplier says they've given us and what the invoice and what the purchase order says. If something goes wrong, you want to move this through a credit resolution process, and you want that to be automated where the suppliers interact directly with you in one continuous purchase order. You want the completion to be updated as and when required and move itself across an accounts export that would be bespoke to your finance system. So when you do this and you automate the whole process, naturally you'll see a reduction in time. You'll potentially even see 95% reduction in accounts payable and purchase ledger. And that is averaging out about £1,200 on £100,000 spent. So when you actually think about that reduction in data churn, how does it actually impact us? We think about manually updating nominal codes and keying in invoices repetitively every day. We think about the accounts payable team having to chase suppliers for more information, statements, and chase the team, chefs, for information on have you lost that invoice. We would then typically cross-match those products, sifting through your invoices one by one, a very laborious and onerous task. Typically you might miss those chef's shoes that you managed to slip onto the invoice. And then having those manual transfers collected at the end of the month, where you can then give to the stock taker to then reevaluate, would then want to be all automated. Collating the accruals at the end, ensuring that you've got the right cost centres as well as VAT types. So I think we can all conclude that this would be a very boring and onerous task. So given the opportunity to automate this process, we think about how we can reallocate that time. We want to ensure that time that we've saved is in producing other savings within the business. And the first one that we want to look at is capturing the credit. And typically when we look across the industry, it's not the greatest thing that we do as an operator. Typically we don't allocate enough labour time to chase down your 50 pences. We don't cross-reference to see if someone's slipped in a price update without your knowledge. And we don't check for those discrepancies and weights when the invoice comes in against the delivery points. So because we've got all this manual process that we're skipping, we then typically see across the industry that it's a 0.2% credit capture ratio to the spend. Now if you were implementing an automated system and a process, then you would want to see at least another 1% on that credit capture, and typically the customers within Access Procure Wizard would see anywhere between 1% and 2.5%, depending on their supplier variability and the processes that they currently use. So in simple terms, what is the equation and the formula for success? Well, automated credits and interactive supply chain is going to then increase your savings by 1.3%. Now that's not a fixed figure, but it could be something you aim towards when the system's implemented. You want to adapt your processes inside the business so that you can gain things like daily tasks and then update automatically by clicking into that purchase order and analysing the data, ensuring that you've got the ability to automate a credit directly across to the supplier, and then be able to then add additional comments and features so that your interaction with the supplier is direct and up to date. You'll want that information to pull back into that analytic summary so that you at a head office level would then be able to drill into that. As well as this, you want to ensure that the training sessions are then allocated and give the team the ability to then keep up with any new advanced features that's been launched. Now, if you're going to install these procedures, then what you want to do is then allocate the time to look at product management and potentially even stock holding and inventory management. When we think about the product management benefits, we think about streamlining the tender process, rationalising your product list and then increasing the control of the buyer guides to your staff. We want to get best price purchasing at all times to ensure that the products you would get are the best quality at the best value, ensuring that you're increasing your profit margins at the gates of the product. Now to do this, you're going to have to control your gates. Inside the recent price change area, you would want to see what's actively changing within the system. You would want to see what the impact to the business is, and if there was any historical information attached to that product and how often it's changed through its life, as well as having the ability to then interact directly with the supplier, leaving comments as and when required. You would then want the ability to then drive into the category system of that one particular product, in which case Access Procure Wizard uses a feature called mini markets, where we can drill into one area and then switch off a product as we see fit, or allocate it to a particular supplier as and when you require. Now when we've got all the products in play and we've got all the pieces that were coming through the system, we then want to ensure that the calculations that are then produced in the stock management is then going to be accurate as well. So we think about what could go wrong if we were still using manual processes. They would be complicated, with external auditors' costs attached to that as well. You most likely will be running on out-of-date information and manual processes to catch that up. The inaccurate count data would then have to be resurfaced and recounted, in which case you're delaying another stock count before we can close. And all of these reactive measures will inevitably lead with loss of profit. So when we ask the industry about stockholding days, the relative terms are they're variable, We can be looking at 18 days within a hotel, or 5 days within a bar, 4 days within a restaurant. But it would depend on the size of the unit and depend on the operation itself to what's allocated. But the question is can you benchmark your stockholding days? And can you evaluate what your theoretical profitability is based on the information inside your storerooms? So what other control measures, as well as the average stockholding days being calculated, do we want to look at when we implement a new system? We think about controlling our savings. We think about manual processes being reduced and then increase those automated inventory control measures. We want the unknown variances to disappear and live reporting on product deficit control to be maintained at a high level. We want overcrowding in storerooms to be depleted, as well as the risk of spoilage and wastage being reduced. This also turns to the temptation of pilferage being an issue within the business. We want the final evaluation and close processes to speed up so that we can gain variance management and theoretical analysis and an overall group report as and when the count is completed. So when we think about those storerooms and we think about the current systems that we've got in place to track the stock and the inventory, do we have adequate resource to track wastage? Can we then put our hand on heart and say that we know what the wastage is in the business and look at the peaks and troughs throughout a current week or within the business within a month? We then ask operators, do you know what the typical tolerances should be? And then we get a result of 58% are yes and 41% are no. That's given us a lot of variability or playroom to get things right or wrong. So what benefits could it be that if we introduce a waste management system and the effectiveness that it will have on the business and the change in the mentality of the operators? You then think about, we would want to reward the waste recording, not punish. Otherwise we're going to get inconsistent data. We then want to create monitors that are easily used within a mobile device or a tablet. We want to understand the common trends and then be able to identify where we can reduce the waste and control it in a better manner. We would want to then create theoretical bands across our business and then introduce control measures that we can train out to the team so they can understand and operate correctly. We would then want reporting at group level with indications to where all those areas come to sit and common reasons to which we can actually log against each one of those waste products. Where typically we see a saving of 4% across avoidable waste. Now the FSA tells us that 16% waste that currently comes through in our purchased goods could have been avoided, in which we can then tap into that 16% and lower it by additional 4%, looking at savings in the region of £6,500 against £100,000 spent, if operated correctly. Now inevitably, this is going to then impact our gross profit. We've got control on the price management, we've got control on the stock holding, we've got control on the wastage. It's obvious that the gross profit is going to be impacted by this. But then where does the additional benefits from the gross profit come in? Where else can we look at the system to then gain information that will then increase our savings or increase our profitability? First of all, we want to take each one of the products and break it down into the dish so that we can understand where the theoretical gross profit is per line, as well as having a full sales mix across the entirety of the menu. We want group reporting with live data so that we can tap in and take a proactive approach to whether a business is suffering in the middle of the month or at the end of the month. And then we want to set allowances and tolerances, put some additional processes in there that allow the approvals to then activate whenever something goes out with tolerance, and then someone else can then action that as you go through the week. So these impact the operator as well, where we can actually track their daily reports as well as them. We can also highlight what available spend is left at the point of the basket creation. So this means that they can have visibility over what money they're about to spend versus what's left in the pot. We can control those products that they can buy, as well as designing the menus around those products to maximise that profitability. And then we can engage the consumption reports, which means that we can actually reach out to the suppliers and ensure that the key line products that are currently going to be used within this seasonal menu will be impacted directly with the best savings. Do all this properly and you should see up to a 1.4% increase in your gross profit across the group. Now again, it's circumstantial and it's only there if we allocate the time and put the effort in. However, the outcome will more than outweigh the cost. So in summary, we have the do's: analyse your data, automate the process, project performance, understand the trends and take control. They don't get bogged down in creating the data. Continually manually updating that information. React when it's all gone bad rather than be proactive. And then do as we've always done. And the most common case of failed businesses, do nothing. Concentrating on the do's, what impact is it going to have on the team? Well, it's going to give you absolute accuracy on the data. It's going to give you increased satisfaction and reduction in mundane tasks. And it's going to streamline your online ordering processes and then increase the morale. For any other questions, feel free to contact us at theaccessgroup.com/hospitality, and we can provide you with the information for the solution that will best suit your business.